everyone. Welcome to our second podcast. This is DiversiTea with M and V. Today, we'll be discussing different New Year celebrations. So, to get us started, I want to introduce myself. My name is Valerie, she, her, aya pronouns, and I am one of the GAs at the UFMC.
And hi everyone, my name is Miso. I also use she, her pronouns, and I am the other graduate assistant at the UFMC.
For today's podcast, we have special guest Marvin's Pierre, the graduate assistant for the Black Student Resource Commons.
My name is Marvin. As Valerie just said, I am the GA for the DSRC, and my pronouns are he, him, his, or they, them, theirs.
And we also have Meijong Lee, the graduate assistant for the Women's Commons.
Hello, everyone. This is Mei Zhang Li. My pronouns are she, hers, and hers. And as Valerie said, I'm the graduate assistant in the Women's Commons.
Awesome. We're so excited to have you here with us today. So, just to provide a little bit of background, there are many fun traditions around the world during the time of New Year. People smash plates in Denmark to bring good luck in the new year. We also see Brazilians wear white, as white is a sign of peace and prosperity. There's also the Dutch New Year's traditions marked with fireworks and consuming oliebollen, a Dutch donut, which translates to oil balls. In the US, the tradition of the ball drop in New York began after the ban of the fireworks in New York City. So the then owner of the New York Times newspaper company arranged for a 700-pound ball to be dropped from the second tallest building in the New York City during 1907. I have never been to New York, but what a sight to see. So I've shared a few ways folks around the world have brought in the new year. I'm curious to know what insight or different celebrations our guests have experienced. So when do you celebrate the new year?
So I celebrate the Hmong New Year and everything. The Hmong New Year can actually have like quite a long duration, but I particularly like this time because it's just being having the opportunity to be at home with family and friends.
So New Year's for me is pretty interesting. I am Haitian American, so my family is Haitian. Um, so the same day as New Year's is also Haitian Independence Day. So that is essentially my New Year's is that we celebrate our independence from France back in 1804. So that is sort of like how my New Year's looks. It's both ringing in a new year, but also celebrating my family and my ancestors' independence from colonizers.
Wow, that's super cool, and I really like that. For me, I actually celebrate it twice. I celebrate Western New Year on December 31st as the New Year's Eve, and then January 1st. And with this, it's a time for me to spend time with my friends specifically. And then time where I spend New Year's with my family is actually Lunar New Year, and those dates depend on the lunar calendar, so it actually changes every year. And this year it starts in February 12th, I believe. And so I celebrate twice, which is awesome.
So I'm Hmong American, so I celebrate the Hmong New Year, and celebration really depends. Traditionally based off of like the crop season, so kind of like an equivalent to Thanksgiving. But our New Year celebrations can honestly start as early as September 1st, and then end actually on the New Year on January 1st. And the duration and time frame of how long you celebrate really depends on geographic location. Here in the United States, we celebrate the Friday after Thanksgiving for 3 days. And we wear our traditional clothing and participate in like ball tossing games. If they're back in Southeast Asia, those can be like a week long of a celebration.
Thank you all for sharing. It seems like we can bring in the new year all year long. So invite me to your next New Year celebration. You've already kind of spoke to it a little bit, Meijong, but I'm curious to know if anyone else has any specific traditions that you practice to bring in the new year.
Yeah, I could speak to mine a little bit. So actually, some traditions and something that is like one of my favorites I look forward to, every year is that on New Year's slash Haitian Independence Day, usually Haitian families would gather for kind of like either like a lunch or like a dinner and drink something called soup jumu. And soup jumu is essentially another name for like squash soup. And what is like the significance of this is that back before when Haitian slaves were before they were liberated, it was seen sort of like as like a delicacy for like the rich white masters that had sort of like power over them. So kind of like the symbol was then taken away from, you know, the white masters and turned into sort of like more sort of like a symbol of freedom for my people. So that's what has become the tradition over years, and it's still happening today. Like if you follow any Haitian person on Instagram, you'll see a bunch of pretty much what it's kind of like an orange colored soup, and it's really delicious, by the way. I highly recommend it if you ever get your hands on it. But that's sort of like my favorite part in tradition that we sort of practice. Unfortunately, this year, due to COVID, I don't think that will be happening, and this will be my first time not being able to be with family and partake with that. So it's a little bit sad. So I'm going to attempt to make it myself. I hope it comes out like correct. I hope I don't anger my ancestors, but we we will figure it out.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Yes. No, it's similarly a tradition I have as a Korean American is for New Year's we eat this thing called tteokguk, which is a Korean rice cake soup, and we eat that every New Year. It's to celebrate similarly just the new year, and so it's like you're gaining another year of life. So we also eat soup for the new year. And something else that I love about Lunar New Year are the red envelopes. So what I traditionally do is I do a formal bowing to my parents or just folks who are older than me. So that could be aunts, uncles, grandparents. It can also be my parents' friends. And so I do a giant head bow from standing up and having my head pressed to the ground to show my respect for them. And once I do that, my parents usually give me some words of affirmations and some things that they wish upon me, like prosperity, good luck, and happiness for the new year. And then they hand me a red envelope with money. So that's one thing I do appreciate, but also just being able to connect with my own traditions. Typically, you're supposed to wear Korean traditional clothing, but I personally don't own them. So my family just likes to wear nicer clothing during that time and celebrate that way. So that's another tradition I love participating in.
Oh, I love all this talk of food and family because it's also again similar for me as well too. Depending on like Hmong families and what your religious belief is. I am like shaman, so for us, the New Year is also about calling back ancestral spirits into the home to protect and guide your family, bring in financial wealth and everything. So we don't necessarily eat soup, but if you participate in like the spiritual calling part of it, we have like this chicken, or this is chicken, right? It's a chicken that is cooked in like herb broth, and it's just plain chicken, and everyone eats it because it's like you are physically eating back like the wealth into your body, also just like eating into your ancestors being with you all the time. And then also like we tie strings around our wrists or our ankles depending on where you like it placed, and again these are tied on to you usually by your parents or grandparents, and again while they tie these on you they are saying kind of like equivalent of like a prayer for good luck and asking again, the ancestral spirits to always be with you for guidance and protection.
I'm learning so much about the different ways to bring in the new year. When we were talking about this topic, I shared with Miso that the only thing I really do that could be considered a tradition is eat grapes on the eve of December 31st. And it's 10 grapes that my family eats, and you're just supposed to eat them like as the countdown. And I was doing some research because I was like, why do we do this? So it's actually comes from a Spaniard tradition, and it's they do 12 grapes and one grape for each month. And then the other thing that we would do is wear like undergarments, so like our underwear or like our bras in a certain color. So if you wear red to bring in the new year, then that means that you're bringing in love. Or if you wear green, that means you're trying to get like money in the new year. So again, I don't know where we got these things from, but it's just really cool to hear you all connect these like to your ancestral lineage or your cultures. And so I appreciate you all sharing that with me. So, who do you celebrate with? I know normally with the pandemic, things will look differently this year. So, have you given thought to how you'll be bringing in the new year?
Yeah, this one's a tough one because I mean, usually the answer, like I said before, it would be usually with like my immediate family, and we would gather at my parents' house. Would be my parents with my siblings and my grandparents and folks that have like lived with us growing up. Obviously, and it's also even weird because like in this past year, there's been like a lot of transitions in my family. Me and my siblings all now live in different parts of the U.S. Like right now, I'm in San Diego. One of my sisters live in New York City. The other lives in Washington D.C. And my older brother lives in Central Mass, and which is still away from my other family. So everyone's kind of scattered and all over the place right now. So we have even like thought of even like what the logistics were even going to be on how we would even ring in this new year. It's probably gonna have to end up being something virtual, unfortunately. But usually this day is meant for to be with family and for us to remember sort of like the rich history that our ancestors have laid the groundwork for and like getting our liberation. So that's normally how it'd be, but I don't quite have an answer yet on what New Year's or Haitian Independence Day looks like in a remote world. So yeah, I could get back to you on that.
Yeah, Marvin's, I completely resonate with you too, just because my New Year celebrations have always been surrounded by like immediate family. Particularly like when we are doing like the spiritual ancestor calling back into the home, it's always with my immediate family and everything. And then the actual like more of like the fun fiesta New Year celebration is with friends, and we dress up in like traditional Hmong clothing and go to the convention center, like I said earlier, and like participate in ball tossing. So I'm a little bummed out just also because like I haven't actually worn my traditional clothing in a very long time. And for some reason, the new year is kind of like our 1 year of excuse to wear Hmong clothing and just see kind of like new styles emerge. And so I haven't been able to do it for a while, and that's something that I'm particularly most disappointed about with like being here in like during this pandemic. And also my family, my Hmong family and friends are primarily back in Minnesota, so I'm going to have to see how I can one make my own food, and if it's gonna taste anything even close to what my mom can make, and everything. But hey, I would love to like potentially have like maybe a Hmong New Year distant dinner or food drop off too as well.
I hope that Marvin's and Meijong end up cooking a delicious meal and then posting pictures on Instagram so I can be jealous about it. I understand that, this year's celebration will be looking different. And so I look forward to seeing how you each decide to bring in the new year and still hold true to your cultural values. And so, just to wrap up our conversation, do any of you participate in New Year resolutions? Why or why not? And since we're ending this year, did you have a New Year's resolution last year? And did you complete it?
I find this question kind of funny because I do participate in resolutions, but the question is really, do I really do them? Because like I'd make all these goals and like, oh, like this year is gonna be the year of like this and that. But I think over the years I kind of just sort of like, yeah, I'd make sort of like quote unquote resolutions, but I think I'm just more so kind of getting more in tune with getting more so in tune with what the universe will like present me in like that given moment in time, and just kind of like manifesting like what is right for me as like the year goes on, right? Like I think like a lot of folks like to make these very grand goals or resolutions at the beginning of the year, and then I think a lot of the times we end up in disappointment when we make these really big goals, when they're sometimes not met. But I think there's also like some space we should give ourselves some grace when those goals are not met, and that rather maybe we should make goals and adjust along the way and like adapt to like kind of like how life kind of just like throws whatever it's gonna throw at us at the given moment. So I think that's more so like what I'm leaning on. Might make resolutions just for fun, but also like not not holding on to them very concretely.
I find it very interesting for me because I think how I see New Year's resolutions have definitely shifted. And I'm like pondering about the word resolutions because then I think of the word, what are you trying to resolve with your life? And I'm like, I'm not trying to resolve anything about my life. Of course, I'm always trying to grow and improve as an individual, but I feel like it's not really fixing that needs to be happening on my end, but more so growing as an individual. But also, I say this as someone who is very goal oriented. So I bullet journal pretty regularly and I actually do monthly goals. And I try to strive for 3 goals a month. And typically, it's one academic, one professional, and one personal. And they're as easy as like miso create a savings account or to something really large saying I want to finalize my action research project by this month. So I think doing that way, it's easier for me to manage within a month's time frame instead of a 12-month time frame. So if I don't do it 1 month, I can always just pass it on to the next month. But typically, I've been pretty good at keeping that up. Also, 2020 is it's been a year. So I think taking things day by day is something that I want to start incorporating a bit more and just really appreciating my day-to-day things. And so that's kind of where I'm at with my New Year's resolutions and whether am I going to participate? Probably not, but maybe.
I completely resonate with both of you on that like resolution thing. Do I have the want? Do I have the intention? Yes, but follow through. It's a little rough and everything with that part of it because I feel like I just personally get overwhelmed and then like I feel like I have to live up to like these expectations. But again, as I have gotten older, I think my resolutions are what Marvin's had shared. I'm really about like just living each year to the best that I can. And so, even as I think about right now, my New Year resolution is to be able to answer the question at the end of 2021, are you happy? And I want to be able to answer that with like actual real gratitude and happiness and even thinking about like 2020. And I'm glad that even this year, with like the pandemic and everything that has happened, the challenges and difficulties that I've experienced, to answer that question of like, am I happy? Yes, I am. That's taken like a lot of personal development. I'm really glad about that, and I want to continue growing personally towards like my dreams, my happiness, whatever that means to me. On another note, my real New Year resolution this one year upcoming is to graduate. Like sincerely, it's to graduate. That is like the one thing that I will definitely follow through on that.
Yes, so beautiful. Each of your answers are just inspiring me to get my ish together. So I really appreciate you all, and I'm hearing just this theme of personal growth. Last year, for the year in 2019, for the year of 2020, I told myself that I would travel more. So in January 2020, I took out my passport. Then we went on lockdown. So I have not utilized my passport at all. And so it just goes back to what Marvin's was sharing. You can try to plan, but the universe has, its plans for you. And so really taking up those opportunities when the universe presents them to you and using them to grow. So thank you so much for this conversation. I wanted to open up to any of our panelists if there's any last minute thoughts or things that you would like to share.
I really enjoyed this conversation with you all. I sincerely do love learning about like how other cultures celebrate New Year's, especially here in the United States, as like the Western calendar is obviously the one that we tend to go with. But I think just being able to see, particularly in like our community, like it's rooted in ancestral family belonging and just really being able to enjoy good food, good company, and good conversations.
Yeah, I also want to say thank you for having me today. It was a pleasure and so super fun. I haven't taught my family's New Year's traditions usually with anyone outside of kind of the Haitian community. So this was like kind of like nice of being able to like be able to like talk through that, especially like in our age of COVID right now. But yeah, thank you all for having this conversation.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. And I will leave you with, what are some New Year traditions that you're aware of? How do you ring in the new year? Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at the UFMC. Follow us on Instagram at USD UFMC and leave us a comment to be entered into a raffle. See you soon.